Welcome everybody to our workshop. As you take a look at this photo, please answer the question, is this learner engaged? And if you give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, if the person's engaged, a thumbs up. If they're not engaged, a thumb down. What do you guys think? I've got several thumbs down. Desiree, I see that you're not giving me the thumbs down. If you go down to that little emoji button down there on the bottom, you'll notice that, and then you can go and find it. Did you see that at the bottom of the page?
Yes, thank you. There it is.
Oh, very good. Thank you so much. And we have thumbs down all the way across the board. So what do you think is the impression of this learner's state of mind? Go ahead in the chat. What do you think this person is thinking at this moment? Someone says thinking about lunch. And Ed says not in the mood to learn. So Ed, have you ever been in a situation where you felt the person was not in the mood to learn? And then what did you find out when you actually talked to that individual?
Yeah, we've had a couple situations at the academy where we had students that you could just tell that they were their mind just wasn't on the task at hand, and you wanted to ask and see if there's something you could do to help them out, and come to find out that they had an issue at home, that something with their family, their children, wife, or something of that nature, and you just felt bad for them. That family is first, is what we advocate in our at the academy. So obviously, when something happens in someone's family, we certainly want them to do whatever they have to take care of their family.
Right. So that was a great point, because sometimes there's things that are going on that are beyond our control, right? That we think they're just not interested in learning. It turns out that's something that's totally different. Does anyone have a situation where there was a person that was not engaged, but it was simply because they didn't really want to come to class? They had basically been told they had to come, but they didn't really want to come because they felt they knew everything. Does anyone ever have a situation similar to that?
Yes.
Okay, can you just tell me a little bit more about that, Desiree?
The labor safe or clean room training, and many people have been in the company for 30, 40 years, and why do they have to sit through the 40-minute class when they could just take a test and test out of the class? So,
right. A very good reaction. So how did you handle that?
I created the course so they could test out of it.
Okay. So you kind of came up with a workaround around that. Yes. So what we're going to talk about today is our learning objective is another way of actually learning to engage people by telling stories. And so the learning objective is to explain why stories engage participants and improve retention in an adult learning environment by the end of this session. According to Doug Stevenson, emotion is the fast lane to the learner's brain. Stories not only engage their attention, they also improve retention. What do you guys think about that statement? If someone could just raise their hand, what do you think about a statement about stories not only engage their attention, but they also improve retention? All right, Crystal, what are your thoughts on that? Oh, you can't come off the unmute. I apologize. There we go. Let's see if we can make that now. All right, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you for doing that. No, I mean, I think that stories make the information engaging and memorable, and especially if it's a lot of fact information, it really helps you retain the information.
Very good. Can you think of a story that you've used perhaps in training that has helped that yourself, or have you not used stories in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely haven't used storytelling in the past, and it's something I want to use more of. However, I can think of examples of when other people have used storytelling, and it's helped me remember the information.
Fantastic. So let's go ahead and see how well you guys remember some stories. So just shout out when you know the answer to this one. Superman is faster than a
speeding bullet.
Speeding bullet. How the blank stole Christmas.
How the Grinch stole
How the Grinch stole Christmas. Absolutely. How about this one? Who is this?
Snow White.
Snow White. Absolutely. And how many dwarfs were there?
7.
7. Very good. So I noticed that, Chris, you answered those 2 questions about Snow White. When was the last time you actually either heard the story or saw the movie of Snow White?
Oh, gosh. Forever ago. At least 25, if not 30 years. 25
or 30 years ago. Why do you think you remember it?
Because it's a good story and it's memorable.
Okay. And were you watching that as a younger child, or did your parents take you to a movie, or what was the circumstances when you actually saw this story, if you recall, some time ago?
It was a movie I watched as a child at home.
Okay, awesome. The prepper for this was to read The Art of Engagement, and 2 points were facilitating adult learning is challenging, and adult learners have mental blocks that impede instant acceptance of learning content. Storytelling can help overcome these obstacles. So please review this slide. And there are several benefits here. And use the arrow button on that left-hand side to identify what you believe. Oh, it sounds like we have a little paper in the background there. If you could please just use this bulb, I'd greatly appreciate that so that we are not getting distracted there. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So go ahead and use the little arrow key over there on the left-hand side. And I annotate which one of these benefits you think you most relate to. So just go ahead and use that. The little arrow key and take which benefit. Okay. Ed, you want to challenge people without coming across as confrontational? Hey, Ernest, you said you can't annotate. Let me check here real quick. There we go. I need to put you on. So now go ahead. Can you do it now?
Yes.
Ernest? Awesome.
Yes, sir.
Crystal says make your ideas more memorable. And Ernest was break down cultural barriers, allowing people to relate on universal truths. So Crystal, you said you make your ideas more memorable. Why do you think that would be?
So as I mentioned, like I don't use stories often, but I've definitely had other trainers or facilitators use stories, and it makes the ideas memorable because it's a good story, because it's fun, because it's entertaining. And so that's been really helpful for me as a learner.
Okay. And Ernest, you said break down cultural barriers, allowing people to relate to universal truths. Why does that resonate with you?
Because in my industry, I work in the transportation industry, and we go all over the country. We deal with international transportation, and so we get kind of pigeonholed into thinking that everybody thinks the same way we do, everybody feels the same way we do, but there's a whole bunch of different cultures out there, and we don't want to offend anyone, basically because we want to impose our thoughts on them.
So can you give me an example of perhaps when you used a story to help overcome one of those cultural barriers so that it didn't cause people to have any issues?
Actually, yes. When I was a trainer, we had there's a particular culture, it's a cultural belief that the body cleanses itself. But for me, I'm like, no, we need to take care of that on our own. So we would get into a situation where I had to actually have a conversation with a driver to make sure I didn't offend him in stating that we don't want to be offensive to customers whenever we go in because we're representing to some of them a entire industry. So we kind of had to work that through to make sure that we weren't offensive to anyone.
Outstanding. I appreciate that feedback. All right. So we've covered a little bit of information today. So if you could just raise your hand and give me one key takeaway that you have from our lessons today. So if someone could just raise their hand and tell me about a key takeaway that they have from what we've covered today. All right. Ed, what was your key takeaway?
My key takeaway was storytelling, and it just really helps to emphasize the concepts that we're trying to teach. I mean, it just makes it a lot more stronger, and I think our learners are more engaged, and not only when they're more engaged, they retain more. So, I mean, it's just a win-win altogether when we use storytelling.
Okay. I know, Crystal, you had said that's not something that you'd done much in the past. So how do you think you can apply what you've learned today to, change something that perhaps you're going to do in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I'm putting together my lesson plans, like I really need to just be more thoughtful in looking at the content and what stories from my own experience are going to make sense and how to, weave them into facilitating. So for me, it's just taking the time to be thoughtful and incorporate it.
Right. Very, very good. So let's recap today. Storytelling engages learners. Storytelling can evoke an emotional connection to learners. And storytelling improves retention. 63% of attendees remember stories, and only 5% remember statistics. So if you remember this guy early, here's what can happen. You can turn a disengaged learner into an engaged learner by effectively using storytelling. Thank you so much for attending our class today.